What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to, well, it's been a long time since we've done some of this sort of stuff, isn't it? We haven't streamed for ages, but you know what? You know what's coming up this weekend? Rugby. Rugby in the Southern Hemisphere is back, and rugby is back in Australia. So you know what? We're only about 24 hours, probably just over, from Super Rugby AU getting started, and we're going to mix things up this year. We're doing something a little bit different. We're doing some streaming on the previews, like we kind of flirted with a little bit last year. So we're doing a bit more of that here. 24 hours to go. I hope you're all excited. We're here to preview the mighty 2 games coming out of Australia. And you know what? We just cannot do it alone. So we are going to be bringing in the main man himself. He is back on the channel. Shane, all I can say, sir, welcome back to rugby. How are you going?
Good, Steve. A big g'day to you from the land down under, and a kia ora to our friends in New Zealand from me. Um, Steve, rugby last year in tough times united a lot of people and brought them together when we physically couldn't all be there together. Um, the players can't wait to get back and entertain us again by Australian standards, that is. Um, so I just cannot wait for tomorrow night, and we're only 28 hours away from seeing kickoff, and bring it back. And all I can say, mate, I'm just thrilled. I've got the gyros ready to cook tomorrow. We're gonna have a feast.
Back to the old barbecue rugby, is it? Back to the good old days of, what we talked about last few years, eh? It's good to be back. We do have the 2 games, though, and of course, if you're new around here, you've not tuned into one of these before, not been around the channel before, we do run Super Brew, so those of you out here who do want to put your picking nous to the challenge, there'll be a link in the description. You can check that out, as always. Take on my picks. Now, remember last year, I had a great season last year, but it was the big man Batman who actually took the title out in our Super Brew competition. So, we'll make it public what we do. Last year, Shane, we went quite out early, didn't we? We went out early with our picks. We stuck with them. And I think we had a pretty good year with our picks as well. So it's all fun and games. But, hype must be pretty massive over there, is it? Australia, like I say, it's been a tough year. How have you found the teams preparing it? Is the hype over there in Australia, is it huge? Are the people, the public, are they excited? You've got a new broadcaster over there this year as well. So things are changing for the better, you reckon, improving?
Oh, I had my certain opinions about the broadcasting rights, as did everybody else. So we've got to give the Stan, who do the streaming part, a chance, as well as Channel 9, who will do the 1 game a week as well, which means that people can watch some Super Rugby free to air, which is fantastic, and as well as for people like myself who like to stream and be a part of that content. So I think it works well for both fan sets. So, but I think the excitement is generally about what can we offer. This is Dave Rennie's first full year as a Wallabies coach. Obviously, he had six test matches last year to see what he could do. We're going to find out from those 6 matches who wants to come back to Super Rugby and really prove themselves for a test spot later in the year.
There's exciting times ahead. Now, we do have the 2 games. We're going to look over these 2 games. We'll talk a little bit about the 5th team that isn't in action this weekend, but we'll have a little bit of a chat about them at the end and where we think they're going to end up. But of course, we've got the Reds versus Waratahs. That's our big season opener, and I think that's quite the cracker as well to start off with, isn't it? The Queensland versus New South Wales battle. It's old orange sort of stature, isn't it? It's right up there. And then I think this one's going to be a really surprising and interesting watch. Game number 2 is the Western Force back again. They're up against the Brumbies. That one, we'll talk a lot about that one, I'm sure, because the team's name for that will be really exciting. But let's get into things, Shane. Game number 1, look at this. Bang! There you go. Reds down here. The Waratahs over here. How good is that? Our 2 teams and the mic right in the way, of course, of the whole picture as well. So First game, opener, your boys, the Reds, up against a team that, like me, we dislike the Waratahs. I don't like the Waratahs either. How have you found your team preparing for this? Now, we'll go over the team named in just a tick, but your Reds, coming into the season, they were pretty good last year. You must be full of confidence this is going to be another big year for your Reds. Maybe their best in recent history since they won the title.
Well, I loved what they did last year, even though they just didn't quite get the title against the Brumbies, but they played their hearts out all year, and even in our last part of what was known as Super Rugby in general before COVID hit, they'd started to play some really good rugby and be very competitive in all their games as well, and then moved that onto the AU competition where they were runners up. So that is really, really exciting for a young team that we've always said they had the potential, and I think that they showed that potential. So can they keep that going? I think they can. The big sadness is that Liam Wright's going to spend some weeks on the sideline with injury, but James O'Connor becomes the next captain of the Reds, and you know it's the total redemption story, isn't it, Stephen? He has come so far in the last few years, and now he gets to lead the boys around the paddock. So, and also a chance to continue proving himself for a Wallabies jumper as well.
Yep, plenty of those up for grabs, isn't there? Now, before we continue, I should say I'm used to recording these and actually streaming them. But a shout out to everyone who is actually watching out there. We've got some comments coming in. The Rugby Opinioneer says, "How are you all doing?" So we're doing great. We're doing rugby's back. We can't be any better, can we, Shane? So you got to be happy. But thanks to you guys who are coming and tuning into this live. And of course, we'll be live on the channel later on as well if you do want to check it out again. But here you go. This is behind the scenes almost, is how we record these videos. It's, we're professionals, Shane? We're one-take wonders. We just come on here, we talk about the games, and bang, out it goes, straight to you guys, just like that. So thank you, anyone who is tuning in out there to the live stream as well. Now, this team, a few interesting calls through these sides. So we'll go through the starting 15 here for the Reds, starting at the front row. Xander, Murphy, and Fotuaka in the front row. Blythe and Uru will be in the second row. Scott Young, McWright, and Harry Wilson in the back row. McDermott and O'Connor, like you've said, at the 10 jumper with the captain's armband. Stewart and Paisami in midfield. Dalgunu on the left wing. Patara at the right. And Jock Campbell at fullback. A few notable omissions there, namely one on the bench in Italiano Tupou. But it's an ever-building team, isn't it? It's Red side. They're going to be hard to beat. Up against them, though, I think this Waratahs team is very interesting. I find them intriguing to watch, although I do like watching them lose. But their team starting off with the front row, Bell, Horton, Harry Johnson-Holmes at 3, Card at 4, Wetton at 5, Jack Wetton, that's an interesting one we'll talk about as well. Harrison, Tizano, Dempsey, the forward pack. Gordon, again, he wears the armband, so another interesting addition to the captain's ranks there as well. Will Harrison, I'll say something about him later on as well. Walton and Parisi in midfield. James Ram left wing. Alex Newsom the right. And Jack Maddox at fullback. Good matchups in there, isn't there, Shane?
Yeah, I think with the younger side, obviously with no Rob Simmons and Michael Hooper in that Waratahs side, they're going to have to look for every skerrick of leadership that Gordon can provide. But I think he'll fire up that back line. And I think both sides, with how young they are evenly matched, Steve. I think this is really, really about who can control that midfield in the way that they can with the style, because the approach is very similar. Both sides play that old school Australian game of run it up, work it through the middle, and hope your backs can finish off. So I think Rob Penny has said, this is my team, this is who I want in my team, and has cleared out perhaps some of the old guard to allow some of the new fellas to come in. We saw the evolution of Will Harrison last year. I must admit, before the Super Rugby AU competition started, I did say that had some concerns, but those concerns have been lessened now. He started to pick up towards the later end of that tournament, and so some exciting times for both Reds fans and, I've got to say it, even the Waratahs.
Yeah, I can't believe Will Harrison was not a Wallaby last season. I'm not a huge Waratahs fan, but that guy was such a huge standout. Some good old guys coming back, like who he's up against this weekend is going to be massive in James O'Connor. But Will Harrison, I think, is certainly the future for the Wallabies, along with the Brumbies have as well in their ranks. But a few debutants potentially coming into this Reds team as well. They've got, about 3 guys on the bench that could possibly come on. Like I say, new captain in O'Connor, but that backline battle is going to be really interesting. And I like what the Reds have. They've got excitement. I like the fact they've kind of gone with that Stewart and O'Connor mix again, because I think that worked quite well when you've got a guy who can take over those reins, because O'Connor does like to go and play rugby. He likes to get out there, not just sit there and set his team up phase after phase after phase. He'll have a go. He'll take a crack at the defence. Stewart can cover in when needed as well. And then you've got Higgity on the bench, who likes to do a similar role from fullback or wherever he comes onto the field. I like that Reds team. I like the back row. Again, Harry Wilson and Fraser McWright, 2 guys I just loved watching last season, even though they're Australian. That is a good positive for them as well. The Waratahs, I think they're going to be up against things. Jack Maddox is a guy I think really needs to stand up in this Waratahs team. He is kind of a guy who's been around for a few years now and has to actually make some moves. He actually has to be a star guy who's going to actually come into that side, make some inroads and defenders, and get himself around the field. But yeah, a lot of youth in the sort of matchup. So it should be interesting to see how these 2 teams go throughout this season. And like I say, that back row, a lot of interesting things going on there. None of those big names, those guys that have been there season after season for the Waratahs. Now it's time for their youth to come through. And I thought last season was going to be their big youth season in Australia. I thought that's going to be where all these guys come through. They're only playing Australians. Now it's the time to smash it on in. But here we go, doing it all again. Really good matchup. First game of the season. I think we're going to be in for a cracker of a matchup. But are you picking your boys to get the job done here in this game on the season opener, Shane?
It's hard. If Liam Wright was there, I would be saying I'd be totally confident of it. But there's no Hooper or Simmons for New South Wales either. And not forgetting Simmons was a great Queenslander once, you trader. Love him to death. But he obviously was a key man for the Waratahs for a couple of years as well. So I'm going to go with the Queensland Reds. It's at Suncorp Stadium, big Queensland crowds with more people allowed in now to stadiums. The best way to start a season is a grudge match. I'm going to go the Reds by 1.
Oh, just by 1. I really
think it's going to be a really good game of footy, and we're going to enjoy what this contest over 130 years is all about. And that's just pure rugby, 2 pure rugby states going at it.
I like it. What a start to the season that would be. A game going down to the wire, a 1-pointer. That would be epic. That would be a fantastic start, a fantastic advertisement for the competition as well, and brilliant for new watchers, new platforms, everything like that. It would be a great start. Is it going to happen? I think the Reds going to do it a little bit more easily. I've gone the Reds by a mighty, how many fingers? 8 points. To get the job done. It's going to be close, it's going to be exciting. I do hope these teams run and attack and play good rugby and do entertain the fans that can get there to see that game. So that is a great start. I think we're both agreeing it's going to be fairly close. So I hope we get a good, cracking opening game of Super Rugby AU. Now, I do want to move on to game number 2. So let's get a little bit snazzy here and go, wow. And game 2 is right here. Here you go. Boom. There's the force. And there are the Brumbies. Game number 2. I like that. Isn't that flashy? Game number 2. Oh, where do we start here? Where do we start? Hang on. First things first, Shane. Let's go through this Western Force lineup, shall we? Let's go through this. And
Absolutely.
Okay. Starting at the front. Tom Robinson. Katu. Medrano. Yes, Santiago Medrano at 3. Jeremy Thrush is back in. Fergus Lee Warner. Thomas Lozana. Yeah, that's right. Kane Koteka. Bernard Stander. Ian Pryor, John O'Lance back again. Cole Godwin. Tavita Kurandrani joins that midfield. Marcel Braki on the left wing. Byron Ralston on the right. And Rob Carney there as well. We'll also have a little bit of look through the bench. Andrew Reddy, Angus Wagner, Greg Holmes, very experienced, Ryan McCauley, Tim Anstey. There you go, Thomas Cabelli, Jake McIntyre, Richard Kahui. What is going on at the Western Force? I've been trying to get a hold of Brett, who comes on the channel a fair bit as well. He loves the Force. He's a Force man. He absolutely lives and breathes the Force. What has gone on here? They're just pilfered the Jaguares. Santiago Medrano, Thomas Lozana, and Thomas Kubeli, along with Tavita Kurandrani and Rob Carney from Ireland. Oh, I'm kind of speechless when you look at that team. It's fantastic, isn't it?
It is. Plenty of Wallabies, plenty of Pumas, plenty of All Blacks, and plenty of other nations involved in between. But if I could quickly say thank you to the Western Force for their sacrifices last year to play on the East Coast and away from home. Otherwise, we wouldn't have had Super Rugby AU for a start. And thank you for giving some of the Argentinian players a chance to play in this competition so that they get exposure, particularly when Trans-Tasman, we hope, will start after this competition as well, which only beggars their case for further Argentinian selection. So the Western Force are the big spenders. I wish I had some of that cash too, or pay off my next long service leave holiday. But you've got to hand it to Andrew Twiggy Forrest and the Force organisation. They are not here to make up the numbers, not with a playing list like that anyway. I didn't think, even though they didn't win a game in Super Rugby AU last year, they still gave it a red-hot go. So they're going to be no mugs this time, and particularly against Australia's best side in the Brumbies. So, this is. I thought the Reds and the Waratahs, and I still believe, will be the game to watch tomorrow night because of its grudge match capacity. But I can tell you, in Perth, you're going to see a really, really good Western Force side have a really good go.
It's exciting. Oh, it's exciting, isn't it? Isn't it great to see after last season, the Western Force finally managing to get back home, like talked about that travel factor and playing away all that time. It's awesome. But some of these names you've brought on, like international players often come into Super Rugby, Northern Hemisphere players, and don't probably impress as much as we would like or envision or dream that they would. I hope Rob Carney, as a solid player, if not, he's not a whizzy spectacular Christian Cullen, is he? He's a solid player. He's like people are probably going to find this offensive, but I'd put him more on the Ben Smith sort of side of things here. He's a good, smart footballer. He does the right things. He gets in the right places. He gets himself in space by being clever and how he plays the game. That's going to fit, I think, the Western Force because they need rugby smarts. They've got the talent, they've got the speed, they've got the sharp skills, but they kind of just need that rugby smarts around the park to get them going around. Now they've got the muscle. That scrum with Medrano in there is going to, take off. Lozana is he's just a big meat sandwich. He's going to hurt some people in there as well. And of course, let's not forget the impact the guys like Bernard Stander had last season in this Force lineup. He was an absolute massive standout in that side. But a bit disappointed we're not seeing the guys like Henry Stowers and Tevin Ferris still in that team, because I thought they were fantastic as well for the Western Force. But boy, Kurandrani, let's go on to the Brumbies. Tavita Kurandrani leaves the Brumbies, goes plays for the Western Force, and hello, first game this season, go back and play your Brumbies there, Tavita. Their team, though, it's much what we expect from the Brumbies, isn't it? James Slipper, Flau Fainga, Alan Alatoa, Swain and Neville in the second row, Rob Valentini, Jerome Brown, and Pete Samu is their back row, White and Lolosio. That's their halves. Now, Lolosio was the second guy, along with Harrison earlier. I was talking about the Waratahs. he did play for the Wallabies last season. It made a good account for himself as well. But there is your future in that number 10 Wallabies jumper. I can't put anything past those two guys. Simone and Iketel in midfield. You got Hansen on one wing, Muirhead the other, Tom Banks at fullback. It's a Brumbies team, isn't it? It's what we expect in a Brumbies team. There's been some gaps. They've lost some players. They've plugged them up, but that core is still there, isn't it? And it's a very, very dangerous core that we know will play Brumbies rugby, won't they?
Yeah, they'll be up for it, straight up. And they'll know the task. They won't be fazed by the Western Forces cash splash. Joe Powell's probably the one that's not going to be there. He's off to Melbourne, and we'll probably talk about that at a later time. But other than that, the list is almost the same. You know, when we talk rugby smarts, as you well mentioned, the Brumbies have that, and they'll know what to do and when to do it and the time to do it. And so that's the danger for the Western Force here. If they get a little too complacent with their all-star side, the Brumbies can put you down to earth pretty quickly. And look at that Brumbies forward pack, 3 Wallabies in the front row. You've got 9 and 10, both Wallabies. You know, there's a lot of Wallabies in that in that Brumbies side, and they'll be raring to go. And I just beware. This game will be quick. I believe this game will be a fast-paced game, Steve.
It's interesting you bring that up too, isn't it? Because last season we did quite often find with the Force that they did lose that momentum at the end of games, didn't they? They'd be with the team and they just couldn't quite play that full 80 minutes. They've had a lot of professionalism and a lot of international sort of style, level rugby that guys will be fit and rearing to go as well. So that'll help them. But they need those guys to always step up for the full 80 minutes. You know, the guys coming through that system, the guys who have played for the Force in rapid rugby in the past, the Brackies, the Rolstons, the Fergus Lee Warners, those sort of guys that have been there for a while. Those sort of guys need to step up their game and play a full little cameo for the whole entire matchup and get that impact off their bench as well. So it's interesting you mentioned that. I think it's going to be a really, really good point. But the ultimate time has come to make a decision. We'll leave a little bit of time to talk about that fifth and last side before we wrap up. But Force, it's everyone's, it's that deep down. I'd really love the Force to win this game. But realistically thinking, it's hard to go past the Brumbies, isn't it, for this victory?
Yeah, last year's champions and well deserved. And I believe Wallaby coaching making in Dan McKellar as well. So I'm going with the Brumbies by 3. But I know that the Force from last year have taken a step up this year. And they only lost to the Brumbies by 1 in the trial match at Viking Park in Canberra a couple of weeks ago. So they won't be far off.
They are. They're a good side. They're getting better. I think this exposure is certainly going to help them out to this next level, isn't it? To lift up and get better out of their players. I think Kurandrani's going to help a player like Godwin. Having that guy that's going to bring attention through that midfield is certainly going to help those guys outside. I think Byron Ralston's going to have a field day of a season if he can keep Kurandrani in a little bit of form. And I think Kurandrani needs a fresh challenge because he's been pretty complacent looking over the last couple of years at the Brumbies. So I think this is going to be good for him and hopefully can rekindle that good form that we've seen from him a few years ago. But I do agree with you. I think come to the end of the day, that's just that core that the Brumbies have, that game plan the Brumbies have, and the way they can grind out games, grind out results will just be enough for them. But I do hope we get an exciting matchup. I'm going to go the Brumbies by just 5, but I do reckon this is going to be 2 cracking games. Let's be honest, it's not just 1, it's 2 very unlikely sort of games. If you talked about this 2 years ago, although who would have thought we'd be in the situation we are, but if you talked about the Western Force against the Brumbies and the Reds and the Waratahs, you would have thought, well, that's a pretty boring weekend of rugby. But hey, I think it's going to be quite the contrary. I think it's going to be exciting. Hopefully, like you say, they do play nice attacking rugby and get into it and score some points get into these, variations of rules, play to those advantages with the kicks, the corners, and the 50-22s and that sort of things. We know what James O'Connor likes to do with that sort of style of play as well, so we'll see more from that. John O'Lance as well, smacked himself in the head a few times, missing out on those sort of opportunities in that Western Force jersey. So we're both agreeing with our picks, but there's also that fifth side, the Melbourne Rebels. They're missing out in action this weekend, but they will be back, of course, the following weekend. A little bit about them, Shane, how do you think their season's going to go? Personally, for me, I think this is going to be a season of probably struggle for the Rebels, because I like the way the Force are picking up, and I think for mine, the Waratahs and the Rebels are going to be the team battling down this bottom end of the table this season. What do you reckon?
Well, Steve, Dave Wessel's their coach is very lucky that they made the playoff final. The game to make the final, to keep his job virtually for another season, because the question mark is it the players, or is it perhaps the coach not getting the results from the money that they themselves have spent over the last 3 years trying to get that squad to a certain competitive level. And they just beat the Force on the Siren last time to do that. So can I say with your assessment, I agree with it, because I just can't see them really going up even further than a playoff level. And not forgetting that hopefully, in a few months' time, we are going to have Trans-Tasman as well. They've got to make a further step up from Super Rugby AU for that competition, for that 5 weeks as well. So there's a lot of factors in place, and I can't give any certainty to Rebels fans that it's going to be any easier. But can I again say, like with the Western Force, the Melbourne Rebels made a big sacrifice to play again in New South Wales and Queensland and other places like that, to keep that competition going. And we are, as rugby fans, very grateful for what they've done. Hopefully they'll be able to play a few games at their home as well, and their fans get to see them in action.
Never a truer word spoken, Shane. You're very, very good at your splashing out the love to all the rugby players and fans and everything out there in Australia. So it's great to see. And a big thanks to you, though. Big thanks coming on. This rugby season has crept up. It's crept up on me very, very quickly. So it's great to be back. It's great to have you back on the channel and everyone who's tuning in. Hank has chipped on in from Oakland. He's over there in the big US of A, where I would have been last year. Thanks for reminding me, Hank. My holiday last year that got killed. I'll just cry in the corner after this. But he's looking for an edge for his betting on Super Rugby AU. So, Hank, hope we've helped you out. We're going with the Reds and the Brumbies to get the job done. And that's our reasons. That is why. Shane, last word from you. Thank you for coming back on as per always. But anything you'd like to add, fire away.
No, well, Steve, it was great to have a holiday, great to get up to North Queensland, see the snakes and everything like that, and the beautiful Daintree and the reef. But enough about that. That was that part. Holiday's done. We're back at work, and what a great way to come back after work to watch the footy. The rugby is back, and, let's just get excited. Let's enjoy it. And I'll be putting my cooking recipes on this year on Twitter. So please tune into that as well. Rugby feeds.
Oh, that's what you need. Yeah, that's what everyone needs in their life. Oh, that is it from us today. A big thanks to Shane for coming on. Shane, we'll do it again next week. I don't know when, but keep an eye on the channel. Make sure you subscribe, because we'll be here. We might even do it live. Who knows? We'll sort it out during the week, and we'll be back regardless, bringing you our thoughts on all Super Rugby AU and, of course, Super Rugby Aotearoa as well when that kicks off. So do not go anywhere. Smash that subscribe button. If you enjoyed our little rambling and chats, do hit the thumbs up, and we will see you all next time. Until then, thanks for stopping by. Thanks for watching, and thank you for your thoughts and feedback, and we'll see you all next time. Until then, though, take care.